and welcome to the stream. How are you doing?
Boom.
Well, yeah,
Welcome.
great to be here. This is exciting.
Thanks so
Yeah,
much for
welcome to the
joining.
Temple of Technology.
Welcome to the Temple of Technology. Yeah, it happens to
Nice.
be this podcast specifically, not OpenAI.
Also, probably, big day in the
Big day.
OpenAI Slack today.
Yeah,
Probably a lot of
congratulations on
emoji
the
reactions
merger,
on
the acquisition. That's
the
very
IO
exciting.
acquisition.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get into
So much going on.
design and decision making around design and devices at some point. But let's start with the announcement today. Can you introduce yourself, exactly what you do at OpenAI, maybe even how long you've been there, and then what you released today?
Yeah, sure. My name is Nikunj. I'm on the product team here working on our API. Been here for almost 2 years now.
Cool.
Been working on the API since day one, and mostly focused on getting out new models in the API, releasing new tools, just making the API much easier for developers to use to build applications. So yeah, that's me.
And then today, what's the big announcement around tools and features in the Responses API?
Yeah, sure. So about 2 months ago, we released the Responses API. We used to have an API called Chat Completions that was, the thing that almost all of AI was built on top of. We created a new iteration of that endpoint called the Responses API, which is much more powerful. It supports built-in tools. It supports multiple model turns. It's really, natively built for models like O3 and O4 Mini, which have reasoning built into them. And today, what we did is we expanded the suite of tools that developers have access to. So the most exciting thing is support for remote MCP servers.
Mhm.
And so now developers can plug in their Responses API integration into any remote MCP server across the internet. You have servers like Stripe, Shopify, Asana, Linear, HubSpot, and I think this ecosystem is just going to grow so much more over time. I'm really excited to see what people build on top
And
of it.
is the benefit of direct MCP support something about latency? The idea that, because I imagine that I could be interacting with the ChatGPT API or the GPT API, and then make a separate call to Stripe's API, and I could even
Yes.
have Cursor or Windsurf write that integration for me, and that doesn't seem that difficult. And I've always wrestled with MCP being, it's great, it's cool, it's a standard, but what's the real value besides saving a couple developer hours writing an API binding library or wrapper?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of angles to this. So,
Mhm.
firstly, because these organizations and companies are building MCP servers, they're taking an LLM first approach
Mhm.
to what the API needs to expose
Mhm.
to the agent. So, Stripe has a bunch of APIs that can be used to create a subscription or a customer, or a product or a price. But for an LLM, they could just sort of combine that into a single function. And
Mhm.
instead of returning this like massive JSON object, they
Mhm.
can return something that's very specific to the task that was being solved, so that the LLM can like more easily understand what's happening. So it's an opportunity to like rewrite your APIs to be very LLM first.
Interesting.
So that's
Very
the
cool.
first thing. The second thing is like friction, right? Like what you said is like maybe 2 hours of work, but why do the 2 hours of work when you can do it in like four lines of code in
Code,
like
yeah.
less than a minute? And so this is just going to make it so much easier for developers to put together multiple tools and whatnot. The other sort of thing that I'm really excited about is like Responses API. It takes multiple turns. So in chat completions, you would have to like put it in a for loop and like make it keep going until it tells you it's done. The
Mm.
Responses API, you give it 3 or 4 tools, you give it a task, it'll keep going
Okay.
automatically,
Got
single
it.
API call, finish the whole thing and give you the result. So it's
Interesting.
truly magical when you get that.
That's amazing. Rune famously wrote, "Text is the universal interface." Is it just a standing ovation for him over there today? Because this feels like a victory for the text as the universal interface paradigm. But is there more nuance that you could add to that philosophy of machines communicating with other machines via text? Because that feels like, again, the LLM understands JSON. I understand what you're saying, and probably faster and smoother, but at the same time, we could just train an LLM to speak JSON, correct?
Yeah, totally. I think LLMs can understand JSON. I guess the meta point there was if you could optimize your tools and combine them
Mm,
for tasks that you want AI agents and developers to be able to do,
hmm.
that's much better, right? Like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, a model is not deterministic. So even
Yeah.
if you ask it to call like four tools one by one, it's going to have some instances where it takes the wrong step and then needs to backtrack and like fix it. But
Yeah.
if you have these like curated functions and tools exposed via an MCP server that you can directly go to, it just makes it so much more reliable for agents to be able to like do the thing that they're designed to do. And so there's definitely some benefit to that. In terms of text, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
How
Yeah.
how has your general high level view on MCP evolved over the past, few months? Were you skeptical at first, or were you always excited about the potential of it? It seems like a total MCP victory
Mhm.
at this point.
Yeah. Initially, I mean, the main goal was how do we get an ecosystem of tools started? And OpenAI did this thing with plugins back in the day where we built it all on top of OpenAPI specs. And our plugins was integration was like a little too early for its time because the models weren't that good at like using these like third-party tools really well. And we didn't take a second stab at it, but the MCP folks did. And MCP is great. It supports so much more than just tools. It took off. It was initially like local only, so there was some hesitation about like how will people easily plug into this thing. But now with the streamable HTTP protocol, so that these things can be hosted remotely across the internet, it's just perfect. Like I'm so excited about what's going to happen with MCP over the coming months. The hundreds of remote MCP servers that are going to exist, developers are just going to like plug into them. It's just going to make things so much better. So really excited about the opportunities here.
I mean, currently
Awesome.
most of these, like when you hit an MCP server, you're kind of expecting a few seconds of latency just because of how long
Yeah.
it takes to inference these models. I've been kind of beating the drum on, hey, some of these models are just good enough. Let's bake them onto silicon and make them respond in like 2 milliseconds. And I don't know if that's happening or not. You don't need to comment on that. But I like Midjourney V5. I was like, it's good enough. Like, just make it instant. VO3, I'm like, I'm ready for it just to be like instantaneous. Certainly with deep research and ChatGPT generally. I'm super satisfied. I'm like, I don't really have any requests for improvements to the models. I just want faster and cheaper and easier. But do you think that if inferencing does go through some sort of massive speed up, whether it's from custom silicon or architectural redesign, does geocaching or edge computing become important to the way MCP servers communicate with each other? For example, like I don't necessarily, if I'm going to the Portland AWS hosting of some MCP server, I don't actually want to be routed to Virginia by accident. And so
Yeah.
do you think that that will require like a new rethink of the spec, or is that something that can just be naturally handled by load balancing?
The spec is just like how do you communicate
Yeah.
between the MCP client and the MCP server? So it
Mm-hmm.
tells you like, literally the JSON RPC like
Yeah.
object that needs to go between the two
Yeah.
parties. Optimizing the geocaching of it really depends on the service provider, right?
Sure.
So if I'm going to call mcp.stripe.com
Mm-hmm.
or allbirds.com/API/MCP, which is, by the way, Allbirds has an MCP server. How
That's
crazy
cool.
is that?
Okay. Yeah.
Shopify
You're
has to
not bullish
route
enough.
it to like the right
We need
place.
an MCP server. Help us build
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
I don't know
Yeah.
what we do, but we want to we want to get in on the action.
Yeah,
yeah,
we
you
feel a
should
little bit left
create
out.
a
Yeah.
create a Shopify store and you'll have one instantly.
Oh,
It's
that's
it's really
good. Yeah.
cool.
Okay. Yeah. For the merch, you can
Um,
integrate. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, OpenAI already does a lot of geo routing based
Sure.
on where the inference request is coming from. So
Yeah.
we
It
try
just
to
kind of
like
comes
route
in
it to
DNS
something
layer.
near,
That
and
makes
then
sense.
when the request leaves OpenAI's infrastructure and goes to say Stripes or Shopify's, they could do that as well,
Mm-hmm.
based on either like an explicit URL or something more magical on their end where they can detect where it's coming from and route it to the right place.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other questions, trends in pricing? I know that there's pricing and availability updates. Anything to share there?
No, pricing is like it's an infrastructure play over here.
Yep.
MCP is free to use. You just pay
Hmm.
for the tokens. We have Code Interpreter, which is like the Python tool. By the way, the Python tool is the thing in O3 that can do GeoGuessr like things when you
Yeah.
when you upload your images. So you can just bring
Wait,
that
really?
into the API. Yeah.
Very
So
Wait,
cool.
why is Python relevant there?
yeah, so what's actually happening is when you put a an image in the O3 model,
Yeah,
it writes Python code to like zoom in,
sure.
like tries to find clues, it crops them, it inverts the images,
Got it.
it then like does web searches. So it's like
Yep.
all the image manipulation is based on Python, and that is enabled by the code interpreter tool, which
Yep.
is also available in the API today.
That's interesting.
And
I noticed that because I took a picture of a podcast. I wanted to see how tall the table was. I uploaded this images from the Pat McAfee show, and I noticed that when I unpacked the O3 internal reasoning, it was like writing tons and tons of lines of image processing code in Python, all to draw lines and count pixels to see how tall
that's
the
crazy.
table
Wow.
was relative to the person. It wrote like 500 lines, 5,000 lines of
I
Python.
had
We were joking about it.
poor O3 yesterday. I said, how many white boxes
Oh,
in this
yeah.
picture? And it was coding for like almost 14 minutes.
It was
and then
like-
unfortunately failed.
It was like putting a software engineer on the task for
Yeah.
a month, but now you get it in 2 minutes. But it is
It's
incredible. I can
incredible.
see where that goes. It just adds a completely different angle of attack on reasoning, and it needs to be an important tool in the tool chest. So yeah,
Yeah.
really,
how
really
are
cool
you?
stuff.
How are you leveraging Codex today? I'm sure you guys got early access, but I'm curious if and where it's fitting into your toolkit today.
I see the engineers using it nonstop. Like we had to make a couple of changes for the launch. We had to like fix
Mhm.
error messages. These are like such small things, and you can just fire up a Codex task and do it.
Yeah.
I've used it for docs changes a
Yeah.
bunch of times where I'm just like, there's a typo here, change this heading, and these are tiny things. I just like write it, forget about it, create a
Just
PR.
goes and does it.
I mean, I don't
great.
have to bug people anymore. It's really helpful. And I think engineers are actually doing like even more complex tasks on top of it. But I just see everyone in the company using it, which is really cool.
Very cool.
What are you daily driving as a personal smartphone these days? Are you iPhone, Android,
Yeah.
maybe something else?
IO.
What do you got?
IO. You got early
You got
access
something
yet?
in your pocket? Okay.
It's iPhone.
No leaks,
Still
no
a-
leaks today, but we've been asking. We
Still part of Johnny's legacy.
we try to trick you
Yeah.
into leaking the hardware here, but we'll get you
Yeah,
back
yeah.
next time.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll find out soon
But it's an
enough.
exciting
yeah.
acquisition. But thank you so much for stopping
Cool.
by. That's very exciting. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, congrats
course.
to you and the team on the launch.
Fantastic.
Thank you so
we'll talk
much.
to you soon.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.